Hey there, welcome back to the Support Ops Hangout. This is our weekly podcast that helps you deliver a better support experience to your customers. I'm your host, Chase Clements. It's 2016, which means a brand new season for us and a brand new year for you. Today's show, we're going to be looking at basically what should be a few of your first priorities when you transition into a new manager type role. But before we dive into that, let's go ahead and meet all of our panel. That way you remember who all of us are since we've been gone for like a month now. First up, from the lovely land of Hawaii, Carolyn from Buffer. How are you?
Hey, I'm great. I'm here a week early for retreat, and couldn't be better, basically. It's gorgeous here. Thanks for asking.
See, and Buffer's hiring, just in case you're curious.
Yes, enthusiastically hiring.
Next up, Chase Livingston, who is on Baby Watch 2016. We had Baby Watch 2015 with me in December, and now it's Baby Watch 2016, which I want like live updates. We were joking earlier about Jeff and Sherman and all that, but no, Baby Watch 2016, that should be Twitter updates or something, right, Chase?
Yeah, for sure. I'll see if I can make that happen. I don't know what's in the water or whatever we're doing the show with two of us having babies, but there's two more folks on the show, so I guess we'll have to see what happens.
We're gluttons for punishment. That's what's going on.
That's apparently.
Oh, and then last but certainly not least, Jeff Vincent, who, like we mentioned, was on Dog Watch 2016, which we won't talk about. But yeah, how are things?
Things are good, Chase. Happy New Year. It's good to be back.
See, we haven't done the show for a while, so I forget how to do like transitions and segues and things like that. So we just go with whatever happens. Oh, all right. So with Season 4, we should point out we are trying a few new things, and one of those new things is this idea of themes. Kind of before we just ran, a season would be like a year's worth of episodes, basically. But one of the things we looked at when we saw the listener survey was that basically there were several distinct groups of questions that stood out to us. So we're taking those groups and we're turning them into themes, with each theme running for a few episodes. The first one that we're starting with now is going to be all about basically being a new team manager. And we've got about 9-10 episodes slated for that. So during it, we're going to tackle questions like what a 101 looks like, how to onboard new hires, how transparent you should be with your team, all those kind of things. We think it's going to be fun. We think it's going to help. Sometimes we get to the end of a show and still want to talk about stuff, so it kind of helps us flow into the next episode a bit. So yeah, that's what's up for this one. So for today's episode, basically, you're a brand new manager, which means your priorities are going to shift from being, frontline customer support into managing those that are on frontline customer support. Carolyn put it really well back on episode 99, and she said, your customers are now the ones taking care of the customers. But we want to look at, is that the right approach to take, especially since you're, looking at a new manager. So Carolyn, we'll give you the first dibs on this one. Why? We kind of dug into it a little bit when you made that comment back on 99, but why do you think it's important for a new manager to kind of shift from looking at, the customers as customers to their team members being the customers there?
Yeah, so we're reading a book right now called High Output Management, and I think that in that book he does a better job of sort of naming this and describing it than I would. So I'm just going to borrow the concept. And that's the concept of leverage, like kind of when you have an impact on somebody and then they go and act based on your conversation or your advice or your guidance, your training, whatever that was, then that's kind of like your output, right, is like the output of all those people who you have influenced. And if you are now you have a different level of leverage, because when you have teams now, all those people are then going to go and impact all those customers. So it's just kind of this concept of like having every minute is more important and more essential to because if you spend 10 minutes impacting 10 customers, then you've impacted 10 customers. If you spend 10 minutes working with somebody who's then going to impact 100 customers, then that has a much bigger effect. And like kind of the ripple effect of how every conversation you have and the amount of time you spend thinking through a problem, and the examples that you set, like all of that's going to have like such a bigger ripple when there's multiple people looking to you for those kinds of conversations.
Jeff, I know when you were leading support, I know, for new listeners, you've kind of moved out of leading the support team into a new role and everything. But when you were head of the support team there at Wistia, was that kind of your approach too? Was it, put your emphasis on your team members a little bit higher than the emphasis on customers?
I think that's a good question. I guess no. No, I don't know that I could say that.
Just leave it at that. It's just no.
Works.
We'll just move on.
I think that works really well in an environment where things are very stable and consistent. But it doesn't work. I don't think it works as well in an ever-changing environment. I think in an environment that's changing constantly, the manager or the leader, in many cases, I think those two are synonymous, especially in a smaller company, needs to have it needs to report to two things. One is their team, right? Their customers, as Carolyn was saying, and the other is the business. Making sure that what the team is doing and how they're doing it and what problems they're looking to solve are still important to the business, that they're keeping that context in mind. And that's why a manager has a different set of responsibilities than someone on their team. They have to they have to be a part of these higher level discussions that set things like goals and priorities, because then they have to go and help their teammates execute against those. So I guess all that is to say that if you try to go in to a situation as a manager and just say, well, what I'm going to do is let my team make a lot of the execution decisions, and I'm just going to try to support them and be a good mentor for them, it's not wrong. I can't say it's wrong. All I can say is that I believe inside, I don't know even that I can say firmly believe, but I believe that you're going to miss the things that you're supposed to be watching out for to keep your team evolving and changing. That's all I can. I don't know how to put this into words because I've never been asked this question, but I feel like that's the only piece that's missing from what I don't think that what Carolyn said was wrong. I think that she included that in the nuance of what she was saying. I just want to make sure that gets underscored as well.
That's kind of what I wanted to add. I feel like I didn't say it correctly. If the next question is like, do you agree that you should choose your team instead of customers? Like, I miss the mark if that's kind of like what was followed from my response. I think it's just that your goal is still like the customer. It's just now through a different path. It's a longer path to get there now. It's not one or the other. It's both. But now there's like it's like a two-step process instead of one. But I totally agree with Jeff's comment about like now you have this like other like thing that you respond to and refer to, which is like the bigger picture of the business.
Yep.
Yeah. So
yeah.
I just wanted to know that. No,
I just wish I knew how to say that. I'm sure Andy Grove would have a way of saying it much more concisely that I don't have, but I do think it's like your team will trust you to say, yes, what you're doing is still the most important thing that you could be doing, and it's still an extremely high priority part of the business. It's still critical for keeping our customers happy that you're doing this support day in and day out, that you're like grinding on this really hard set of emails every day. They trust you to do that. And in turn, you have to push on the people who are determining things like where the business is going to go and how you set priority and budget to say like, are we putting our business in a place where our support people are not going to be effective? Are we putting them in a place where we're going to need double the the number or something like that. Though, like those are the things that you have to take on as a responsibility. So yeah, I guess just adding the additional stakeholder of that larger business responsibility is like a really key part to me.
Chase, does that hold up when you look at a bigger organization like Automatic too? Is that just, customers are still being taken care of, but there's that extra stakeholder, that second level that you got to go through?
Yeah, I think in a lot of ways. So we're relatively flat, even though as far as organizationally, even though we're so large. Essentially, we have Andrew Spittle, who's been on the show before, who is essentially the happiness lead for the whole company, who reports directly to Matt, our CEO, and then we have just different teams of happiness engineers that report to Andrew, and each of those teams has a team lead, and that doesn't necessarily mean that they're a manager per se. It's just somebody who's taken on the role of trying to lead the team and being the voice for our team to the rest of the organization and that kind of thing. There's sort of a point person for our group. So yeah, that's essentially how it works. We have regular one-on-one chats with our team leads and that kind of thing, and so they're obviously concerned about us as their team members, our well-being, our professional development, that kind of thing. But they do also still interact directly with customers. It's not like they're not answering tickets regularly or anything like that. It's probably a lot less than what they would do if they didn't have the extra responsibility of being a lead. But yeah, it's definitely, as Carolyn said, sort of a little bit of both still. They're still getting the hands-on with customers occasionally, but also even more maybe impactful, they're making sure that the rest of us on the team who are day to day and with the customers are getting what we need and are having our concerns or our voices heard throughout the rest of the company.
Yeah, so we've talked about kind of stepping back from emails a little bit, direct customer contact a little bit, making sure that the team's voice is heard. Carolyn, what other kind of practical things are we talking about? So, like when we talk about putting the team first, leveraging them, what's kind of some practical actions that a new manager would take to do just that?
Great one. So one thing that we've kind of identified as a key role of the team lead or the manager is kind of being a information and funnel, I guess. So one thing that we sorely missed when we explored the idea of fully flat with no team leads, no managers, and only peer evaluations and mentorship was this idea of a hub. So as somebody who does one-to-ones with several people on the team, or the whole team as it may be, I am sort of in a place to recognize patterns and identify trends quite early. So somebody might say, I had this feeling about, this one thing didn't feel quite right, or just feeling a little bit burned out, or whatever it is. Sometimes it's not that negative. Sometimes it's, I was just feeling excited about this thing and I wanted to pursue it, and I saw that we touched on it and then dropped it. Sometimes you pick that up from multiple people, and that's when you can make a big impact by running that up the chain or whatever, making sure that that's heard and realizing that okay, if it's coming from multiple sources within the company, then it needs to be discussed and it's worth another conversation. So that's one thing, is having not only sort of being responsible for identifying those things and having maybe a system for that, but also then knowing exactly what to do with that information. How do you affect change in that way? So figuring out what then your path is after that. Who do you report to? What is that? How does that work? What's the process for that?
So how do you know what information is stuff you need to act on versus something that maybe not? So you mentioned looking for patterns, and you hear multiple people say one particular thing. What if you hear from multiple people something, I don't know, something crazy, like the buffer should have a penguin mascot, for instance? How do you differentiate between something you need to bump up, need to make that voice known, but versus something that can kind of just be left alone?
Sorry, I struggled to unmute myself there. Yeah, that's a good question. I think part of that comes with the sort of trust and experience of the teammates. So when there's a new teammate, I tend to let a lot of the strong feelings and recommendations wash over a little bit because people feel like, oh my gosh, this customer had this experience and we need to fix it, and this is like the most important thing in my life because, sorry, sorry.
Yeah, tell you what, let's come back to you real quick, and while we let the
Okay.
ambulance or whatever it is, I thought Hawaii was like perfect. It didn't have sirens and everything. Jeff, over to you real quick. Kind of the same question because you've been in this situation before. How do you differentiate between things that you do need to take action on versus like Carolyn mentioned, it's kind of a gut reaction to like a bunch of customers are saying this, and now we have to do something that kind of can be left alone.
Yeah, this is like the ultimate support question of all time, right?
Yeah, I mean, as a new manager, I would be, because as a new manager, you're sitting there going, you don't want to bump up frivolous things, right? But at the same time, you want to make sure that the genuine things do get addressed.
Yeah, I think here's what I think teammates really look for is they look for a team lead who's going to be decisive in some way, and who is also very open to their input. So for me, it's like, okay, we know that we're going to want to escalate a lot of things. We're going to want to do that a lot. Let's pretend that we already have a process in place and say that we're going to follow that process, this imaginary process, with this issue that you're talking about right now. What do you think we would want to do? Well, if we're going to escalate a lot of things, we're probably going to want to compare those. Okay, what other things are coming up that we're going to want to escalate? And I guess what I'm saying is that it's very easy to put a narrow scope on really fast, especially with the heightened pressure of the teammate is really excited and you're brand new to this and you don't want to screw it up. So you put on a really narrow focus really quick and you're like, well, there have been 8 emails about this in the last hour. Like, this does seem like a really big deal. But then when inevitably, and I guess I'm speaking from experience, you bring this up to somebody else, they force you to take that step back, and they're like, well, how many emails did you get over the last hour? And you're like, oh, I don't know, 100? Oh, 8 out of 100. Right? Even though there was some clear signal in there, it's not like you're being overwhelmed with just this issue. It's just that you've picked up on a signal and you're really excited to track it down, right? And so then I guess you'd end up back in this like imagined process, right? Pretend as if you already have this process in place and start to evaluate other issues against the one that people are making a really big deal about. And I think that just, I don't know, that mental exercise as a team makes people feel like they've been heard, and that if you ultimately make the decision not to throw a fit about it or make a really big deal about it, at least they've raised their concern, and they know that as team lead you're going to be decisive about these things in the future. That, I mean, I don't know. We all work in software, so maybe that's why this is easy, but if an issue is an issue this week and it's software, it's going to be an issue next week. So whether we rush to fix it right at this moment or not is somewhat irrelevant.
Carolyn, back to you, assuming the siren's gone.
Yeah, what I was trying to say was I think it depends a lot on intuition and experience. Like, if you are brand new as a manager, but you are not brand new to the team, then you probably have a really good sense of when somebody, what actually is big an emergency and what isn't. Whereas if you're brand new as a manager and you're brand new to the team, then it's a little bit trickier because you're going to need to defer more to the seniority and the experience of the people you're managing. As somebody who has been on the team a while, when I have a brand new hire and they're like, this is the biggest thing that happened today and I think that this is the most important thing in the world, I often say, like, wow, great, like, awesome that you noticed that, like, let's talk through, what some thoughts are, like, go through the exercise, but you don't necessarily have to escalate it if you know that it's not a thing. Whereas, like, if somebody who's been on the team for, like, when Mary comes to me and says, like, something's up, I like drop what I'm doing because I trust her completely. And like there's, you know, once people have sort of established a history of, you know, being good decision makers in these moments, then I think deferring to like experience and seniority helps a lot there.
Chase, with automatic, you know, when you're looking at things to escalate up to your team lead or up to Andrew as a head of support and all, like what's your internal kind of guidelines there? Like, how do you differentiate between what you should be bringing up versus, you know, that maybe something that's not as important?
Yeah, that's a good question, and I think you know we could give a lot of different answers. I know for things that are you know possibly things that we would want to alert Andrew about or discuss with Andrew, like if they're concerned somebody has on the team for whatever reason, we usually you know filter those through a team lead. So you know we have weekly team chats, and that's something that we would talk about as a team probably. You know if it's something that's either affecting all of us or that we want advice on or something like that. And then Ryan, our team lead, could either you know make the decision to take that to Andrew or handle it on his own. I mean, you know, it kind of depends on what the issue is. But yeah, that's sort of I guess an individual case-by-case basis. I know with the you know the team I'm on personally, we're all pretty close-knit, and so we share a lot of the concerns that we, you know, if we have concerns or just a lot of the problems we're facing. You know, if it's just, you know, we, you know, released an update to Jetpack that's really buggy and we're all frustrated with like the support load we're getting or whatever. We just all are really open and share that. And if it's something that, you know, we can either escalate or talk to somebody else in the company about to maybe try to help us out or make sure that this doesn't happen again in the future. Yeah, a lot of that is filtered through, you know, our team lead to sort of be our spokesperson, I guess, if you will, for the rest of the company and sharing, you know, the collective voice of our team.
All right, so just to kind of wrap up everything with this first episode back, one of the things you see a lot of times with new managers when they're trying to figure out their priorities and all is this just this pull to get back on the front lines, right? It happens with support teams. They'll, you know, the new manager will want to jump back in and answer emails or answer chats and that kind of thing. I think back to, you know, when I was at a restaurant, same kind of thing. The manager would, during really busy times, they would have this tendency to jump in on the line and help get food out the door and that kind of thing. Jeff, is that a good thing? Is it a bad thing? Like, what's the limits there? Like, what should a new manager? How should a new manager know when they need to jump back on the frontline stuff versus when they need to stay back and get the big picture?
Oh man, new year, same tough questions.
I was saving this one just for you because, like I said, it cuts across so many different industries here. It's not just tech.
Oh, absolutely. I think I mess this up all the time. I think I mess this up all the dang time. This one feels like one of those things. It's like a circular reasoning. Like there's no way for a new manager to get this right. You need to know how much time, and especially at a small company, this is almost impossible, I think. But you need to know how much time you need to do some of that big picture and like business responsibility stuff that we were talking about earlier. How much time do you need in your day, in your week, to make sure that you're not going to become short-term focused or just focused on the work, right? That you have the time built in to take care of your team and take care of the longer term, like what's coming next type stuff. And then on top of that, you're going to need a buffer. Not the company, but a time buffer. But I'm sure that comes up all the time.
Same great joke, same new season.
Yeah, same inadvertent jokes. But that you're going to need that for every week to respond to things like, I'm having a real problem with this person, or hey, we got an opportunistic chance to interview somebody. Do you think you can take time to work with them? Or we have a major emergency. Can you help? And I think it's okay to cut into that buffer time. Especially for on-the-line work and especially as a new person, because I think your team will continue to respect the fact that you are not afraid to get your hands dirty. But once you start sacrificing that like bigger picture business and team stuff in order to get the work done, which I've done before, they're going to start, I can't put words in their mouth, but they're going to start saying things like, I really feel like you're not accessible. I really feel like I can't get a clear direction. I really don't understand like what's going on with our team. All of which is feedback I've heard before, and all of which stem from the fact that I had cut way too far into those types of weekly activities you need to do to stay on the same team with your same page with your team. So I don't think there's a hard and fast rule, and I think especially for a new manager, it's impossible to know how many hours per week you need for that. But I would say try to use your calendar, set some time for yourself on a daily basis to get those things done. Try to write them down, know what you need to be doing on a weekly, monthly basis, and then the rest of the time you can be on not autopilot, but you can make intentional choices about jumping in on stuff like that. I think that that's not something to avoid. I think anyone who tells you that's something to avoid is kind of deluding themselves.
Chase, with automatic, is it something that team leads and managers tend to avoid, or is it like how do you find the balance?
I guess since, like I mentioned early on, that as far as team leads go, it's not like a managerial role, as in like I have some sort of advanced position or I'm more qualified than you to do something. That's more of Spittle's kind of role for all of us. But as far as the team leads, yeah, I mean, I think there's definitely a good balance there. They're essentially there to sort of be there, like I mentioned, be the voice for our team, but also to, take time to mentor other members of the team. Usually it is somebody who's been at the company for, a decent amount of time. It's not like somebody who started last year is probably going to be a team lead. It's somebody who has a few years under their belt and has been around and knows, what's going on. And so, yeah, there's definitely a mentoring relationship there. Between the team lead and each team member, at least with every team I've ever been on. So yeah, I think there's a good balance between that kind of aspect, and then also the just working with customers and answering tickets and that kind of thing. And the leads don't necessarily do a lot of interviews or that kind of thing. Usually we have an actual hiring team that sort of handles that kind of thing, so that's not going to be a major interruption. Usually the only interruptions are going to be from team members who are having an issue, just need to talk, whatever the case may be. It's not so much from like external sources as it is just within the team itself.
So Carolyn, is the time buffer that Jeff mentioned, is that the key at buffer?
Yeah, so I think that's true, that like there's no way to get it right in the beginning, and I was feeling very convicted when Jeff was describing some of the things that he's done and gotten feedback on. So those all sound really familiar. One thought that I had a little bit while the last both of you were talking was, I think it's great to jump back in and like lead from the front. So at a certain level, like that, I think that, like Jeff said, anybody who tells you not to do that is deluding themselves, because that's impossible. I think I would take that one step further. Anybody who tells you not to jump back in, especially as a new manager, and tells you not to do that, like that's the quickest way to lose the respect of your team, to forget how hard it is in a day-to-day basis. Like it's the quickest way to just get disconnected from what your team is dealing with, from the actual customer. Like I would say that's a huge mistake. The challenge is a little bit that I think, yeah, you need time to do those other things. And when you do jump back in, you also sort of starve yourself and your company of the need of feeling the need for that additional person's worth of time. Like what I often did was jumped back in when we needed more hands, instead of like, and then we would have enough hands, and that would like lessen the depth of how badly you feel like you need more team members, and that happens gradually. Like suddenly, like I was helping more, a little bit more, and then a little bit more, and then a little bit more, instead of maintaining a really hard rule there and feeling the like, oh, we just need somebody else so badly. I would just be like, oh, it's okay, I'll just work a little bit harder. And like, especially as a new manager, you're like trying to prove yourself, and you want to like still be buddies with everybody on the team, and you like are feeling super super motivated, and you're like, oh, it's okay, like I can just help out and do all these other things too, and I'll just work extra hours. That's fine because I'm like gonna be awesome at this job. And I think I sort of often waited way too long to like replace myself on the team, because I felt like, oh well, I'm still doing this work, so we don't need that extra person. Or I would even if I knew that we needed it, I would still, sometimes choose to do inbox instead of hiring inbox, which is a little bit maybe of unique. Maybe that's a smaller company thing. Like I was doing hiring, whereas maybe that gets easier when there's a team that it's not a zero-sum game of your time versus hiring. So yeah, I think TLDR, it's probably true that you can never get it right, but and it's so important to do it. Like, don't shy away from it. But if you can maintain that perspective of really keeping track of the fact that every time that you do something, you're sort of lying to yourself about how much time you really have from the like hands-on keyboards perspective.
Yeah, I think I just wanted to say that is I think a really good point, is that you have to somehow keep explicit track of how much time you're putting into that, because I think that what you said, which has happened to me as well, is that it kind of gets away from you a little bit by a little bit, and it never feels like, oh, like I went from not having to do this at all to now I like totally jumped in. It's like, well, I only spent an extra half an hour this week compared to last week. That's like no time at all. But it builds and builds and builds to the point that you realize you haven't spent any time on the other things you need to be doing, or that suddenly you're prioritizing doing the work over helping others do the work. And it's just, that's not scalable. It's just not going to work. The team is going to fall apart. Yeah, I don't know how to do that, but I do think that's a really important point.
And it's not a good use of company resources at that point either, because if you're being paid a manager salary, they want you doing manager work, right? They don't want to be paying like a line chef a manager wage. And that was something we kind of fell back into at the deli a lot of times, where we would be short, we didn't hire enough, so you'd have a hole opened up, so the manager would jump in that hole, and then all of a sudden, instead of paying somebody $10-12 an hour, you're paying somebody $50,000-$60,000 a year to do that job, which is just not a good use of resources at that point. So yeah, I'd echo and say, as always, our panel is pretty spot on with this. The only thing I'd add would be, we talked a little bit earlier about finding the patterns. Find the patterns in your inbox flow, right? Because with Basecamp, mornings are a little bit easier to break away from the inbox and do other stuff versus the afternoons, where it's, you've got to be focused on that inbox. So there's probably some kind of pattern going on with your customer flow there that you can take advantage of. If you're a new manager, you might be able to block out and say, hey, Thursday mornings is kind of a slow time, so I'm going to take 2 hours, and that's my 2 hours, and don't break out of that. So yeah, that's the only thing I would add. Anything else, ladies and gents, before we wrap it?
I have just one more thought. Like the thing that I think I sometimes fell into was forgetting to prioritize. Like it's not necessarily that hiring needed to happen on a shorter term scale more urgently and more drastically than the inbox. Like that will always, the inbox is always going to feel like it's or the hole on the deli line is always going to feel more urgent. But there's this sort of North Star of like, am I doing the thing that only I can do? Like, what's the work that only I can do? And that's the stuff that's like important but not urgent. Whereas the stuff that like needs to get done but anybody can do it. It's trying to hold a hard line of like, right now, today, maybe the most important thing is that I jump into the inbox, and that's what it feels like. But that might be what it feels like tomorrow, and the day after that, and the day after that. And like, if there's a chance that there's things that need to be done that I'm not doing that nobody else can do, like, then that's the point at which you have pushed too far.
Yeah, I totally agree with that. I also wanted to add that something that we didn't talk a lot about, and we probably could have a whole masterclass on, taught by somebody besides me, is the fact that, like, I guess going back to what Carolyn said about leverage, is that when you add someone new to your team, you get their time, you get 40 hours of their time. But if you also help them be even better and even stronger and make better decisions and do things faster, better, invent new ways, that it compounds on itself really fast. And so as a new manager, I think this can be really hard to pick up, but over time you realize that people aren't, I don't know, it seems weird, but like, people aren't just stuck in that moment in time, like that's all they're going to be. Like, they're going to be something really great, even better than what they are now, and we only hire really great people. So it's like, how can you help them get there? And it's only by giving them really challenging work on a tough deadline, and giving them candid feedback, and that just takes a lot of time, but that the leverage benefits are really huge. So I don't know, many different ways of saying the same thing, that like, when you're up against a tough wall and someone's saying like, hey, we're not getting back to people fast enough, and your first instinct is, I'll just jump in and start answering more questions, and then of course we'll get back to people fast enough, you're not solving the long-term problem. So you should be making an intentional decision to make this for the short term, because otherwise it's not going to work.
All right, that's our take. Seems like a spot to end on. So let us know what you think. Head over to supportops.co. There's a brand new way to get in touch with us, which is kind of cool, courtesy of Help Scout. In the bottom right corner of any supportops.co page, you'll see a nice little message beacon. Pretty cool. Just click it, and yeah, it's pretty self-explanatory. There's a message box there, and you put your message in. I guess it's kind of self-explanatory. I kind of feel like it's not
I'm just gonna press the button now.
Yeah, just press the button. Just press the button. Or you can tweet at us. It's this week's shoutouts. These are the things that are making us happy. So happy, we want to shout them out and let you know you should be using, buying, or whatever. So, the very first shoutouts of 2016. Jeff, what do you got?
I've got nothing. I completely forgot this was a part of the show.
You're off for a month and you forget?
I got something. We put together a little video to thank the team at Slack for their software and what it's done for our business, and they sent us socks. They sent us a huge box of freaking socks. These things are so cool. So I'd want to shout that out, because, like, I don't know, how often have you seen a business? I guess I kind of think Basecamp is on this a very similar level, but this is their own packaging, and the packaging says, "We hope your feet are nice and warm forever, Heart Slack." Like, their brand is incredibly consistent and creative. These just happen to be sitting on my desk, but yeah, that's what I'm going to shout out. I'm going to shout out how cool that was. That was a really cool experience to be part of, and I wasn't even in the video that we shot for them, but that was also very cool. So. Socks.
Hey, have you tried them yet? Are they
shout out.
Still in the package, so I guess not.
Oh yeah, no. This is I stole multiple pairs. You think I was gonna only have the one pair? Yeah, they seem to be fairly. I mean, they're socks. They're totally normal socks.
No, wait. There's not just like socks. I mean, there's socks, and then there's socks. I mean, like good socks.
Mm-hmm.
No.
Yeah, I would put these right in between.
I guess I'm getting old, because I asked for socks for Christmas and got them and was happy, so I don't know.
I was a barefoot child. I don't wear socks or shoes unless I absolutely have to.
That right there is the title of Jeff's new show, Barefoot Child.
I'm in.
Chase Livingston, what's your shout out?
So I'm going to resurrect my gadget shout out for at least one episode here, but it was actually a Kickstarter I backed a while ago. The Roost laptop stand. I don't know if you guys have ever seen that, but when I first started at Automatic, they had some custom ones done, and they were like given to us as gifts when we started at Automatic. But the problem was they did not fit the 11-inch MacBook Air, which is the laptop that I have chosen. And so Roost, sometime last year, announced that they were doing a new model that would fit essentially any laptop that you wanted to put in it. It can change shape a little bit and take some different laptop sizes. But anyway, backed it as a Kickstarter and actually just received it over the holidays and have really been enjoying it. It's pretty neat, a nice way to raise your laptop to like a monitor height. If you don't have a monitor for whatever reason, if I'm out, working somewhere or whatever, I can set it up, and I usually have like a little keyboard and mouse. They even sent like a nice canvas case that you can tuck a little keyboard and mouse in if you want to carry it. So yeah, if you're looking for a nice laptop stand, it's super portable. I would recommend to check it out.
We really need to start getting like kickbacks on all these referrals. We got to figure that one out.
Seriously.
Carolyn, your shout out.
Okay. First, I have a joke. I'm carrying that into 2016, by the way. Did I tell you guys already the one about the pizza?
Not that I recall.
Did I do that one? Oh. You know what? Never mind. It's too cheesy.
Oh, got it.
Oh.
Okay. I have an actual shout out. So I'm shouting out
Mute her? Is that a
OKRs.
power that you have?
What? What is it?
I'm kidding. I'm sorry. I'm sorry. I was just joking. Go on.
I'm going to think I might be happy I didn't hear that. I'm shouting out OKRs, which stands for Objectives and Key Results. And if that sounds like the most boring shout out in the world, you're wrong. It is a process for setting goals across an entire company. It comes from Google. And we've had goals always. We've always had goals. We've always had targets. We've always talked about how we're doing on those targets. We've always celebrated when we reach them, and we've always, evaluated and tried to learn when we don't. But somehow this version is so much different because it's across the entire company, and there's this concept of negotiation. So instead of me setting a happiness team goal of hiring this many people and solving this many things, everything is interconnected. So I might set a goal for hiring this many people and reaching X satisfaction, but what that means is that hiring that many people, that also ties to the hiring team, and customer satisfaction ties to the product team. And so in order for me to set this goal, I need them to sign off on it, and vice versa. And so there's this extensive process where you set the OKRs and then you sort of negotiate inside the team. And we're in that process right now. And so stay tuned. I'll report back toward the end of Q1. But it's the most fun I've had for setting goals, and it's the most honest we've ever been, because sometimes I've tried to set a goal and somebody's like, no, we're not going to do that. And I'm like, okay, well, that actually helps me set my goal. Or I can say, well, what would it mean if you did do that? And is there something else that can give? And it's really fascinating. And we as a team have never been more excited about setting the goals. So we'll see how it goes, if it's actually successful. But for now, this concept so far, I'm loving it. And I can send through some articles and videos that we've read about it. But it's really fun.
I think I kind of got excited there about OKRs. So good job on selling it.
Thanks. We're all pumped.
My shout out is kind of cool news. We, you've heard us talk about the jobs board before. It's been really successful. It's kind of started as a mini project that grew more than we thought. So we have actually decided to partner up with Support Driven, who does a fantastic Slack community and just really awesome resources. They're doing a new support conference. So if you head over to jobs.supportdriven.com, that's where you'll find all the support-related jobs from here on out. Really excited to work with Scott on that. He's done a great job with putting up the site, and we were bringing people in. It was just really exciting all the way around. It's going to take it to the next level, I really think. So make sure to check that one out. When you click on the jobs link at supportops.co, that's where you'll be taken. So if you're in the hunt for a new job, or if you're looking to hire people, I know Buffer's hiring people, and Wistia, is Wistia hiring people? Maybe?
Always.
Always. Automatic's always hiring people. So, yeah, you'll find lots of great jobs. Yeah, so that's it. This show is in the books. We'll have the show notes up at supportops.co shortly. Carolyn just sent me a message and reminded me to make sure to share a picture of my new kid, Elliot. Elliot Roy Clemens. He was born while we were on break, December 22nd. Almost a month old now.
That's why I made
really
this face. I thought that's who you were going to shout out. You said,
Yeah.
I don't know if everybody knows, and I went, and then you talked about the board. I was like, oh, that
I
too.
know it's kind of hard to see in the YouTube video, but oh wait, my phone went off. There, no, see there he is. There he is. Can you kind of see that a little bit?
Yeah, he's pretty cute. It's a great sweater.
He is. When we took that picture, and I'll make sure to put this the show notes so everybody can see. When we took that picture, I told my wife it looks like he's about to drop like the hottest rap album of 2016. He's great. He's absolutely great. Chase Livingston's going to have a kid coming up shortly too. Baby Watch 2016 for him, so it's going to be exciting. Like we mentioned at the start of the show. Speaking of, we're going to have some guest spots to fill. So if you've ever wanted to be a guest on the show, now is the time to get in touch with me. Hello at supportops.co. That'll put you right over to us if that just kind of sounds like your jam. Yeah, because Carolyn's going to be out a couple of weeks. Chase Livingston's going to be out for good Lord, 3 months, something like that. Some crazy number. So we'll have holes to fill. So that said, we've rambled long enough. Big thanks again to our awesome panel. It's great to be back for Season 4, 2016. Thanks again for listening, and until we see you again, have an awesome week.